Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I appreciate all of you guys for coming and joining and listening in on this. This is a topic that I think that whether you're vegan or non-vegan, it's extremely important to understand that the food system is rigged, and it's actually designed in a way that makes it fail-proof. And so it's also a topic that brings a lot of sensitivity, and beyond that, a lot of people don't even know it exists. And so if you are vegan today, a lot of times you turn vegan because of this idea that you believed that your dollar was the way you voted for what you wanted. And as an activist, I'm an activist first, we always should tell people that. But once we know that our taxes are actually being pulled out from all of us to then undermine what our consumer dollar is doing, we now need to react differently and we need to adjust. And so I'm going to go through this and talk about how the food system is rigged. So I'm going to tell you briefly who I am. So I actually have been vegan for 10 years, and I was vegan, I feel like the stories that your grandpa used to say, like, you guys don't even know how hard it was. We walked barefoot in the snow and we didn't have backpacks and we had to carry our books. I'm the vegan that tells the newbie vegans, you have Beyond Meats at all these fast food chains. I used to have to eat a broccoli spinach burger that fell apart as you were eating it. You know what I mean? Like we people that have been vegan for, I would say, 8 years plus, you go back further and you see people that had to travel an hour and a half just to get powdered soy milk, right? And so it's very convenient and easy today, and the food is very powerful today because it tastes so similar in a lot of cases. And so every day you hear of a new fast food restaurant getting a new item, and all of these things are wonderful things. We feel like veganism's growing. These veg fests are everywhere. So I was an activist probably starting, I would say, about 4 or 5 years ago, and the activism that I'd started actually was something that people probably like seeing more than seeing me talk about politics and stuff like that. It's called a vegan Batman light. I rigged a giant stage light, and I kid you not, if you think about this ceiling being anywhere from 10 to 15 feet high, the light in diameter is 7 times this, and I would put vegan messages on building walls all over cities everywhere. And the vegan.
That was you.
Oh, really? Yeah. Yeah, I'd been doing that for several years. And taught a bunch of different groups how to do it. In the Los Angeles slaughterhouse, for example, which is a couple of hours away, it's called Farmer John's, and the very first one was over their courtyard inside of their slaughterhouse. So essentially, it said something like, every pig comes here fighting for their last breath, just as we would in their place, go vegan, or just a bunch of other things. On walls, I put things like on Thanksgiving, it would be like fact or fiction, 48 million turkeys die every year for us to give thanks, go vegan. Those things were something that I focused on a lot. I was doing them everywhere. I was doing them, I moved to Oklahoma, I was doing them in Oklahoma with hunters and helicopters, and just, it was crazy. And that was like my life. It was work, and at night I would do the vegan Batman light. And as I'm seeing, and I'm a numbers person, believe it or not, I would always, look at, how many vegan options, how much the dairy industry was losing. I would pay attention to all these things, and then I'm like, with this many vegans, I feel like on the street in not only big cities, but I also have experience in smaller cities, 1 out of 10 people I come across are either veg curious or vegan. And so when I looked at that, I was like, okay, so guess what this should equate to? It should equate to seeing the production number of animals drop, right? Every one of you has seen veganism surge in the last 5 years. Your assumption is, as veganism's rising, the production number's dropping. Is that correct? Because that was what I thought, right? So I actually started following the numbers. So this is when the vegan Batman light started transitioning into this. So Vegan Justice League was what I started. I really wanted to find a group that was already doing this, and what it was designed to do was to end the way our taxes were being used to undermine what our consumer dollar was being used. Vegan Justice League is the educational arm of a lobbying group. I am not political. I've gone many elections where I haven't voted. I'm ashamed of it in a way, but a lot of it had to do with just being a person that felt like I was always presented with the lesser of two evils, and I just didn't know enough about their policy. I just knew about what the media said. Okay, this is what they believe in abortion, this is what their gun, how they view guns, this is how they view gay rights. It was always those things that they say as the super topical stuff, but what do they believe in agriculture? I had no idea, right? And a lot of us don't. A lot of us really don't know what their agriculture policies are. So anyways, so Agriculture Fairness Alliance is the lobbying arm. And let me see, I think the clicker, there it goes. So the presentation today is about the food system. The food system, horrifically and unfortunately, is rigged. And I'm going to take you through how and why. My handle that people know me by on Instagram and elsewhere, and have seen a lot of those vegan Batman light videos, because I've done a lot of videos showing the light on buildings, and then people come up, is Vegan Batgirl, so Batman Light Batgirl. These are the places that you can follow myself, Agriculture Fairness Alliance, Vegan Justice League, and then you have some Facebook handles as well. This is where I'm going to sort of start. Each week we see so much polarity in the news. One week it's Beyond Meat's unicorn stock, the huge increase. The next week it's the rainforest destruction that we know is correlated to livestock farming. The next day it's Burger King launched a vegan burger to Kentucky Fried Chicken testing a vegan option. This is confusing because sometimes we feel like we're winning and the next we feel like we aren't. So what is really happening? The topic starter is, despite veganism rising, plant-based milks gaining 10 to 20% shelf space no matter what city you go to. Small farmers are going bankrupt. Fast food chains are rapidly carrying vegan options. One of the biggest stock surges in the last 20 years happened. The stark, cold reality is not one less animals died. Not one. Not one. And that isn't because veganism's not working. I'm going to show you that veganism's working. Some would argue that the 20,000 or so increase in the U.S. population would create this, but the math doesn't match with the deductions, bankruptcies, and production. This is what's really happening. Okay, 1.4 billion pounds of cheese unsold, stockpile. Right now, sitting in lockers. This is all of our veganism and any other market condition that basically caused this, and they basically use our taxes to pay them for it anyway, keep the production numbers the same the next year. 2.5 billion pounds of meat. The total, so this I go back and forth with some of our researchers on our team. Because the USDA seems to give an average weight of the animals a little differently. But what we found is that it's between 250 million unsold animals, not in the cheese, just in the meat, to 1 billion animals. That is 250 million animals that died for no reason to 1 billion animals. It almost directly matches up to the number of predicted vegans and how much we're buying plant-based meat. But they'll tell you it's for any reason. They'll say it's this weather condition, it's this market condition. The system is actually so rigged that it doesn't matter what condition. They're always using our taxes to bail them out. The stockpile keeps growing. And so at the end of the day, it's like they've made it to where it's fail-proof, and our taxes are doing that. So in 2018, there was $12 billion bailout. 12 billion. The years prior, it was 20 to 50 million. It used to be in the millions. It's now in the billions. Do you understand how astronomical that difference is? 20 million of bailouts, and now they're in the 20 billions. It's basically like if, let's just say, back in the day, the most economical car was Honda. Tesla comes along, and Tesla is outpacing Honda. No one's buying Hondas anymore. Could you imagine if all of our taxes bought all their unsold inventory of Honda and then allowed them to create the same amount of cars the next year? We would never allow that. And then the next year. And not just the same amount, but increase it by anywhere from 3 to 5%. Could you imagine if we carried any private company like that? So right now, 2019, it's actually been $28 billion. So 2018 was 12, 2019 is 28 billion. And guess what's happening right now? We're still in 2019. A large bailout is being negotiated, which is likely going to be right at about the $28 billion. October 2019. This is just a 2019 report of showing you how many pigs are uneaten and in the stockpile. How many animals is that? Every year. Every single year. And the reality is that first, I'm like looking at these numbers and I feel crippled. I'm like, well, what am I supposed to do? Because I know I'm going to be vegan no matter what, because I'm totally connected. I am so against the oppression of the animals, the environment, and people. I know some people are so focused on animals, but the reality is the agriculture industry is one of the most oppressive to people, right? And you'll have some people that will fight just for the animals. I actually focus on the foundation being animals, but I tie it together with all the other things. And the reason is because once it's political, you have to. You're not going to get federal legislation that far if it's just focused on the animals. You have to understand all the people that it's hurting so that they can support you and also make your number the majority. So you're not just this animal fringe movement. You're now speaking for undocumented workers and the abuses there. You're now speaking for people that live near the CAFOs and how it's purposefully systemically racist. So anyways, going back to this is just in October 2019. This is dairy. So tell me why Forbes and everywhere else, you've seen Dean Foods go bankrupt, you've seen losses like crazy. The Dairy Farmers America reported a drop in sales of over $1 billion from 2017 to 2018. Another $1 billion, I think it was $1.2 billion, 2018, 2019. Why, if you go to the USDA site in 2019, did they already, in that first 3 months, did they increase by 0.2%? Why did they increase? If they've been losing billions of dollars and we've been bailing them out, what business would not decrease their production? They cannot fail. They absolutely cannot fail. Now, a lot of you probably knew this in your heart, and it's just, when I talk about it, you're gonna be like, duh. This is the United States of America, that's why. It really is. The first 4 or 5 presidents were farmers. The entire system was created off of borders of one farm trading deal to another in the United States. So a lot of the foundational laws were created by farmers for trading, for all these different things. What's ended up happening is that farmers are no longer the largest population. Back then, it was 99% of the population were farmers. Now it's like 1.2 or 1.5% of people. But they've stayed in power because they've gerrymandered districts to support their farmers. You may not know what gerrymandering means. I didn't know what it meant prior to several years ago. What it means is that a highly populated area that has a lot of people may not have as many electoral votes as a lower populated area. And so what they do is to keep rural America's vote strong is they gerrymander districts to keep them in power. A lot of people think they do this in a racist way, and it is systemically racist. But the truth is that big ag is racist, but they're trying to stay in power. So by staying in power, they keep control of a 98 to 99% white population and mostly male. And these aren't, it's not like saying, it's not like saying, oh, there's systemic racism and white people are this or that, I'm half white. It's not saying that. What it's saying is that these are the same groups of people, in a lot of ways, the same families that when they came here also were slave owners. They're the same elite group of people that you need to put over here as being elite and supremacist and rigging the system in a way, right? And so here's what's happening. So the rural vote That's why you have presidents, and this isn't just about Trump. I don't want you to think this is just about Trump. The food system's so rigged that you'll see my Bernie slide in a second. So this is Trump. You know he has his Make America Great Again hat, right? This is his green hat, which is it's basically make our farmers great again. Did he make a hat for any other industry? Did you know how tied he was to agriculture? It's not just him, it's every politician, because they won't win unless they get the agriculture vote, okay? So he says, so we will ensure that our farmers get the relief they need, and very quickly. It's a good time to be a farmer. We're going to make sure of that. So today I'm announcing that I've directed Secretary Perdue to provide $16 billion in assistance to America's farmers and ranchers. Could you imagine those cowboy hats? That's the Farm Bureau. It's the biggest agriculture lobby. Could you imagine if that was us behind a president? Why are we not behind presidents? We have environmentally sound philosophies. Like, why aren't we standing behind presidents, shaking their hands? Why do we not have a vegan lobby, a vegan environmental lobby, a vegan anti-oppression lobby? Why don't we? We're at least 3% of the population. They're at 1.2. So Zippy Duvall is the American, this guy right here is American Farm Bureau president. He's right next to Trump. So this is a great quote for you to understand like how in bed big ag is with politicians. When Trump was announcing the $28 billion farm aid package, he says, also with us today are several of our nation's greatest farmers, including American Farm Bureau President Zippy Duvall. Zippy, oh, Zippy has been so good to me. Thank you, Zippy. I appreciate it very much. Along with members of the farm groups representing producers of corn, soybean, wheat, and pork. Remember, there's a pork oversupply, and they are getting bailout money. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, this is messed up on a really, really hardcore level. But I like this playbook. Not that I intended to be part of this playbook, but if that's how it works, why aren't we playing by this playbook? Why aren't vegans, why isn't Trump saying, you know, oh, vegans have been so good to me? I mean, it seriously could be that way, right? All right, now, just so we understand, the most polar opposite candidates to a lot of people. But policy-wise, in agriculture, they're the exact same. And anybody who's going to win the next election will be on agriculture side. Bernie is from the big dairy state. He has given them he's ushered in over time some of the most bailouts and signed them over. And he has also signed off things that actually go against veganism in a lot of ways. So there's like a anti-terrorism act that he signed, which is basically makes some of the things that vegans do when they go on farms and stuff, like get really like higher sentences. He signed that in. He is very friendly with agriculture, and he is ushered. What's that?
He had a stroke.
Yeah.
Because he's eating that crap.
Oh yeah, he won't give it up, and he talks about it. He talks about it very he's very adamant when he talks about it. So this is a crisis, he says. Hardworking farmers are losing their livelihoods, their homes, and their way of life. And as farms disappear, so do businesses and jobs they support. And so does Vermont's iconic working landscape, as dairy farming still accounts for 80% of all of our farmland in our state. Do you realize this bailouts and they call it subsidies? It's welfare. So Trump hates welfare. Bernie is a little bit more open to public welfare, but corporate welfare is just as bad. Like, why are my taxes making people very well off, in a welfare fashion? And so both of them essentially are ag puppets. And you can go through Elizabeth Warren. She has a very similar policy as Bernie does, and it's all the same. So I don't want this to confuse you on who to vote for. That's not what it is. I know different people vote for different people for different reasons, but I want this to make you understand that lobbying is the key ingredient here. Lobbying groups don't need the biggest majority of people backing them. It's just a centralized group that puts pressure on politicians, makes relationships, and is constantly nudging them about what you want. And saying, oh, by the way, I have this many voters that will vote for you and support you if you pass this. So this is a good quote. The food supply has been instrumental for defining the haves and the have-nots throughout human history. It is the most essential element to safeguard in order to achieve supremacy over another. Does this make sense? He who owns the food, he who controls the food controls the world. So that is why Big Ag is actually United States of Farm America. It is so powerful because when they control what we eat and what everybody eats, no matter your socioeconomic condition, they control you. So, so that is exactly how the United States is constructed. This is another, in March 2019, it's going on to show that 1.1 billion. I wanted to really take a moment to highlight this because dairy absolutely would have failed. It would have failed 4 to 5 years ago. Can you believe that? If we hadn't carried it, if we didn't use our if they didn't use our taxes to market it to schools in the country or market it to other countries, so for every consumer they lose here, they use our tax money to market all across the world. If they didn't do that, dairy 100% would have failed. Because this isn't just 1 year's worth. It's actually been since like 2013 rapidly declining. November 2019, it's again just the headlines of the $28 billion bailout. I wanted to show you Trump's tweet because again, this is comical to me, not because it's Trump, but because I don't because how bipartisan it is and how friendly he talks about them. Our great farmers will receive another major round of cash compliments of China's tariffs prior to Thanksgiving. The smaller farms and farmers will be big beneficiaries. In the meantime, as you may have noticed, China is starting to buy again. So the reality is that the tariffs, if you know anything about the tariffs going on, they say that this is in response to the tariffs, but you actually have articles that you have like 6 major economists talking about the bailouts is overpaying them. It's beyond overpaying them. It's like 5 to 10 times overpaying them, and here's why. The Farm Bill that was enacted in 1933, which was an FDR push after the Great Depression, basically made them fail-proof already with a lot of different things like payment plans, insurance policies that our taxes pay for. So they already if they lose money, or if there's a disaster, or if there's any other reason that the animal dies, our taxes already pay for the insurance. So they already are getting paid on that. So when we bail them out, we're like double, triple giving them money for the same animal or for the same item that didn't sell. So, so one, they're being overpaid, and 2, farm income is the highest in 6 years. Can you tell me why in the same year that they pitch you to feel sorry for all those bankruptcies, weren't we just talking about we have to give them money because everyone's going bankrupt and we can't let them fail? Why would it be the highest in 6 years? Because it's our taxes, $28 billion, here's your revenue, right? That's just crazy to me that we let this happen. What's crazier is that we sort of complicitly allow we allow people, I want you in this room, that if somebody ever is like talking down to somebody that needs SNAP programs, what used to be called food stamps, and they get $125 to $150 a month, but that same person is okay with sending $125,000 to $900,000 to of welfare to a farmer who has a higher median average cost of living, meaning if you look at the median average of everybody's income, and they're much wealthier and they're just getting our money, don't ever let someone just empathize for the farmer who's gaming the system. And it's not all farmers, there's a level of it's larger farmers and stuff. But don't ever let someone over scrutinize someone for that. Like the farmer, the elite farmers, they're gaming the system. So they're gaming it for hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? So if they're gaming the system for hundreds of thousands of dollars, why would it make sense to over-scrutinize someone who is getting $125? If you don't like welfare, it should be across the board, right? It should be across the board. If you don't like people gaming the system on welfare, it should be across the board, not just picking and choosing who you don't like the welfare going to. So that I want everybody in this room to go away with. Like, if someone doesn't like welfare, bring up these $28 billion going and overpaying farmers and rich farmers, okay? So I don't want you to think I don't like farmers, because the legislation that we actually put out is assisting farmers to transition to plant-based farming, okay? So the problem, Big Ag is one of the most organized and uncontested lobbying groups that exist. They get Congress to help them rig the food system by using our taxes to pay for all of their overhead costs. So that through the Farm Bill already happens. All of their overhead costs, equipment, land, water, feed, our taxes are paying for. I would love to have a company where all my overhead costs are paid for. Why? Because everything I sell is profit. I would love to then be able, I wouldn't actually, but I would love to then be able to hire people for a lower wage, which they're totally allowed to do. Undocumented immigrants, a lot of people don't realize that the majority of the problem is industrialized farming. Industrialized farming exists because of the livestock industry. Even the plants that workers are tending to, 70 to 90% are for livestock, either United States livestock or China's livestock. So the entire industrialized farming aspect of food growing at all is because of the livestock industry. Additionally, on top of paying for overhead costs, our taxes bail them out year after year, and it's increasing. What does this mean? They make more money by oversupplying and purposely do so. Rather than supply what we demand, right, and lose money when vegans come along, they make more money oversupplying and begging for the bailout. So why would they stop? Just like that Honda Tesla example. Why would Honda ever stop overproducing cars if we bail them out for the higher amount anyway? And they just put it in a stockpile. It also means they're one of the few industries that doesn't abide by supply and demand or free market capitalism. So this is where things go beyond just vegans and this idea that we're all liberal. Free market capitalism and not having a socialist country is very much a conservative ideal. This is a conservative issue. Anywhere from the welfare to mega farmers to rigging capitalist systems is a conservative issue. You should be able, whether you're liberal or conservative or whatever stream you're on, if you're going to Thanksgiving or Christmas and you're dealing with one side or the other, you should be able to tie this together all the way through to any conversation. It is not just a liberal issue. It is a conservative issue because it goes against what we thought this country was designed on, that your success was defined on if people bought your product, right? They are killing more animals than is demanded because they're using our taxes. So how do we solve this? Well, remember I was an activist and I wanted to believe there was already a federal lobbying group that was doing this. I thought there has to be one. And there are a few federal lobbying groups. If you don't really know what lobbying means, it really is, lobbying groups create legislation and then they create relationships with politicians, and then the politician uses that legislation and sponsors it. And when they sponsor it, then they're just getting more signatures on that legislation. That can happen at the local level, can happen at the state level, can happen at the federal level. There are really amazing state and local vegan-backed lobbying groups. There really aren't federal ones. There's one that focuses on plant-based companies and does a really great job of trying to keep the definition of cheese to include vegan cheese, and meat to not become illegal. I think Missouri is a state where they made that more difficult. There are lobbying groups that do that. But as far as a lobbying group that goes head to head with trying to reduce how the subsidies are used and how our taxes are distributed, to just going to the livestock industries and bailing them out, or soybean, which is really feeding either our livestock or China's livestock, which again is a conservative issue. I just wanted to point that out. With this China tariff, 70% of the bailout money is for soybeans to feed their livestock. Like, we're not even keeping that in the United States. We're basically using our taxes to feed China's livestock, right? It's just so, but the specific goal will be to bring supply and demand back to agriculture by 2022, which is the next farm bill. But we didn't want to sit and do nothing until that farm bill. We're obviously creating relationships. So what we did is we created a first piece of legislation which is designed to utilize government funds to transition at-risk farmers to profitable, regenerative, plant-based farming. So there's a public program that we worked with to model this off of. It's called RAP. It's Ranchers Advocacy Program by Rowdy Girl Sanctuary. And essentially, there is a public program where they are working on transitioning farmers who are at need from livestock farming to plant-based farming. They're teaching them how to do that. So when we heard of this, we're like, why not make this the first way of how we start transitioning how our taxes are being used? Stop throwing money at them and seeing them go bankrupt. The bankruptcy doesn't happen the way you think. It's not, they don't reduce production. So the small guys don't get as many subsidy help on purpose. So the big guys do, the big ag does. So if you have like 1,000 or less cows, you're not gonna get subsidy help, right? The bigger operations get the subsidies and they get them out the wazoo. So the small guys are trying to compete by having to pay for their own equipment and pay for all those things that I said that, our taxes help the other groups. And they can't. And so the small guys go bankrupt. The big guys get the bailouts. They absorb their production. And then the unsold stuff goes in stockpile. It's this perfect little, design. So anyways, agriculturefairnessalliance.org is the website that you can learn more. You can look at the legislation. I know I kind of blasé said we had legislation, but remember, just a year ago, this is when I was discovering all this stuff was happening. So in the year, I went from, where is another lobbying group? There isn't one that really is doing this. I guess I'm gonna create my own, even though, again, I'm not a professional lobbyist, but I knew that if I waited for a professional lobbyist and vegans to come together to do it that understood this, that I'd be wasting a lot of necessary time. What I knew through my career, because I've worked, in the software industry and in data, what I knew is I could act as a quarterback to this, right? So I'm playing quarterback. And what we did in under a year was I educated with other people enough people to centralize enough money to hire our first federal DC lobbyist who lives in DC. He is a career lobbyist, and he started in October with the money to be centralized, and already the meetings that he's having are getting such amazing feedback, we believe it will get sponsored. So we're very proud. It's at-risk farmer legislation. It hit DC in October. We still need everybody's help. We need everybody to be on board with understanding lobbying. I think a lot of us, I don't know if the system has kind of drowned this out from us. They make us think the only way to activate ourselves with politics is at time of vote, and that's just not true. The reality is so much of everything that gets signed happens because of lobbying. And people in every social justice movement in the past knew this. Most groups started as lobbying groups who then met and spoke in public and held up signs. So they were doing lobbying meetings, lobbying groups, and came together, and that's when you see them marching. Does that make sense? Like whether it's women's suffrage, the women's suffrage movement, every name you know from Elizabeth Cady Stanton beyond, they were lobbyists, and they marched. We are doing it backwards. We're like marching, and then people are like, I don't know what lobbying is, and we're marching outside the White House with signs, and we're marching outside political realms with signs. Does agriculture march outside with signs? They're standing there shaking Trump's hand. They set up a meeting and walk inside that door. Why are we not doing that? We absolutely could be and need to be. And we need to start acting as big and powerful as we are. Do you not see that Beyond Meat's IPO stock is telling you how big and powerful we are? We are powerful. So let's start acting like it. Now, I know not everybody's socioeconomic condition allows them to donate money, but it's really, and I'm not saying you have to come here and donate money. Point is understand lobbying is a huge part of any social justice movement. When you think of Brown versus Board of Education, did marchers pass that? No, the NAACP centralized money, they used their lawyers, and they took them to court. And after things were, desegregation started happening, do you think every school system abided by it? No. It took many, many years for that same legal group to go specifically in school districts to make sure and ensure it was happening. This is so much, food is so much more political than you think. And beyond that, lobbying groups in any social justice movement, from, like I said, women's suffrage to civil rights to Chicano movements, had a very strong lobbying arm. And we need to start having as strong of a lobbying arm. So let's change this. We have to do it fast. We have to centralize and organize. AgricultureFairnessAlliance.org is the official lobbying arm. If you hear Vegan Justice League, which is what it was, that was the educational arm. We just can't present ourselves in Congress with Vegan Justice League, right? So yes, we're Vegan Justice League as the educational arm, but when we go, we have a lot of different points of discussion, and I talked about some of those. There's undocumented, I believe that in the future, we will start having legislation that takes into consideration the people oppression and animal oppression combined. So transitioning farmers from plant-based or from livestock farming to plant-based farming, it does just that, right? It's hitting on a farmer who wants out. It's hitting on transitioning that production of animals, right? It is also helping the human aspect of it. So I'm going to end this. And then if anybody has any questions, be happy to answer them. But this goes into how social justice and laws totally have to be in sync. Well, it may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that the law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law can't make a man love me, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that is pretty important also. So while the law does not change the hearts of men, it does change the habits of men, and if it is vigorously enforced. Awesome. Thank you very much. I'm Connie Spence, Vegan Batgirl, Vegan Justice League. Does anybody have any questions in the meantime? Yep.
Just a comment, even added to all those costs you talked about on the meat being stored is the storage costs.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. They don't even have enough space anymore, and so in years past, like with dairy, because remember I said it would fail, if they can't transition it to cheese, they just dump it out into the ground.
Well, that's what I tell everybody that is a meat eater. I said, if you got charged what that steak actually costs,
yep,
it would cost like $1,000.
Yep.
You know?
The resources, the money, but then the waste. I mean, the reality is even a meat eater does not, I believe that meat eaters, and we all were, and I don't know where everyone is in their habits, but you don't want animals suffering to be wasted. Nobody wants that. So even meat eaters don't want that, and they definitely don't want their taxes paying for that to happen. None of us do. So to your point, it's wasteful, and it infuriates vegans, but I really believe that it infuriates everybody on the spectrum from liberal to conservative, because we're always talking about don't use my taxes for X, Y, Z. Why are we also don't use my taxes to just dump out food? There are plenty of homeless people in need. Why would we ever, that's blasphemous. Why would we ever do that, right? I recommend any vegan to monitor production like I have on the USDA website. So a lot of veg news sources will tell you we're winning, and it's like, we're not, and we cannot be. We're winning because the production should have gone down, but we're getting bait and switched, and we have to adjust. We cannot sit there and be like, well, someday the system will collapse. You know how many animals are getting abused and put in a stockpile waiting on that someday? Nobody has a crystal ball. Some people say the system will collapse 2026, 2027. That's fantastic, but I'm not going to sit here and just pray for it to happen, because what if it doesn't, you know? So yeah, there's a lot of things that if you go on the USDA website, it gives a lot of transparency, but at the same time you start looking at things and you're just like, I can't believe that this system's got away with it for this long. Yes?
So in order to help you with this cause, you know, as vegans,
yes.
you want to see the change. It sounds like you're saying contributing to AFA to help them have.
Yeah, so 100% of the funds go to our lobbyist. The more hours he has, or if he fills up all his hours, turns into another lobbyist. I tell people this, like, I don't want to ever make someone feel like they shouldn't join big events like this, but imagine there's events literally like this across the United States, and everyone spent anywhere from $3 to $5 to maybe $15 in gas. Everyone's, you know, or let's say an activism event where someone's holding a sign, they paid like a couple dollars for the sign. If we got 10,000 people to donate as little as $5, we could have 3 lobbyists for an entire year. Do you see what I'm saying? So it doesn't actually take a whole lot. It's just centralization with a little. And again, so yes, so lobbying, unless one of us can fly to DC, the best way to support is to centralize the money so the career lobbyists can do exactly what they need to do.
Are there other career lobbyists interested in this that we can support as well? Or is this like the only game in town right
Well,
now?
that's what I was saying. When I tried searching for federal lobbyists that were pushing legislation like this, there wasn't a single one. There are 2 other plant-based, there's a doctor-based one that does health lobbying, PCRM. They do health lobbying, but it's different because it's not, it probably sequentially will change how subsidies are used, but it's not really attacking, you know, and they're not trying to, right? We're laser focused on this. The plant-based group does a really good job, but they're constantly playing defense, having to deflect all of these different states who are trying to change the definition of butter, of cheese, of milk. And so you can search for one.
How about the Humane Party? Are they active in this at all?
Like the Humane Society or something?
The Humane Party with Clifton Roberts, who
Oh,
was president.
so no. So I don't know of any legislation that they're pushing or lobbyists that they have. If they grew, it would be a good relationship to where we help them push legislation. The hard part is that there's a lot of different angles to this where even they have a hard time getting on the ballot. So if no one can see them on the ballot and you have to write them in, I mean, we lose a lot. So I think they still need, you know, a little bit more growth and momentum, but absolutely it would work hand in hand. That's great for an election, right? You're like pushing for them to win, but until they're in there, this is about the 535 House of Representatives and senators that vote on it. And so those are the relationships we have to make, the ones that are currently there. Any other quick questions? I think the next person. So this takes so much of my time. I work full time, and you know, I try to travel within California on my own dime. It just takes so much of my time. I don't do the Batman Light as much. I need to start doing it. It's so fun because I'm telling you, those messages and the conversations is wild. I think as the education in this kind of like, you know, the wheels are greased and everybody gets it, and it's just the lobbyists are meeting with us in the regular time period, and it's not so much of the education factor. I think I'll probably have a little bit more bandwidth to do the Batman Light. Last question? Awesome. I appreciate you guys. VeganJusticeLeague.com or AgricultureFairnessAlliance.org. Thank you.